Chapter 67 of Haft al-Shareef presents a profound discussion about the rights of believers, the nature of faith, divine mercy, and the hidden realities that Allah alone fully knows. Through narrations attributed to Imam Jafar al-Sadiq and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, the chapter explores how believers should relate to one another, and how God's justice operates beyond the limits of human understanding. The chapter begins with Imam al-Sadiq advising his companions to be generous with one another. He encourages them to share what Allah has blessed them with and to support their believing brothers. Knowledge, he teaches, is meant to be spread among believers rather than withheld. To support this teaching, he refers to a verse of the Quran in which Allah asks who has forbidden the adornments and good provisions that he created for his servants. The message is that Allah's blessings are signs of his generosity and are intended for those who believe. The narration then moves from material blessings to the sacred status of the believer. A remarkable account is related by Yaqub al-Sarraj, who says that while walking in the sacred sanctuary he suddenly heard a voice calling from above him. The voice proclaimed glad tidings for the chosen servants of Allah, declaring that many sins could be forgiven. However, it warned that the rights of believers were not to be taken lightly. The voice explained that the believer is a servant whom Allah created with his own hand and into whom he placed his spirit. Whoever harms a believer, oppresses him, or treats his rights with contempt is described as one who has challenged Allah himself. The narration warns that such a person places himself among the enemies of God and exposes himself to divine punishment. This teaching elevates the believer to an extraordinary spiritual station. The chapter then records a conversation in which one of the Gnostics asks Imam al-Sadiq about the rights of one believer over another. The Imam responds by describing a level of consideration and loyalty that appears almost impossible to achieve. He explains that believers should be so connected that they do not act independently of one another and that each should show obedience and loyalty to his believing companion. The questioner becomes overwhelmed by the magnitude of these responsibilities. He asks who could possibly fulfill such obligations. Imam al-Sadiq replies that these are the qualities of those who seek to enter paradise safely and peacefully. The discussion continues when the Imam describes a young man who once asked the same question. After hearing the answer, the young man became deeply distressed by the realization that he had neglected many of the rights owed to his believing brothers. The narration states that before he left, his hair and beard had turned white from the intensity of his grief and reflection. Seeing his sincerity, Imam al-Sadiq prayed to Allah for his forgiveness. The lesson presented here is that awareness of one's shortcomings can become a path to divine mercy. The chapter then turns to a discussion with Imam Muhammad al-Baqir concerning the nature of the enlightened believer. A companion asks whether a believer who has attained true knowledge can commit major sins such as theft, fornication, or other serious offenses. The Imam explains that the enlightened believer is not defined by such actions. He acknowledges that believers can make mistakes and commit sins, but he teaches that there is a deeper reality that must be understood. When asked to explain this further, Imam al-Baqir refers to the Quranic verse describing those who avoid major sins and only fall into minor faults. He introduces the idea that human beings possess layers of reality that are not always visible from the outside. A believer cannot be understood solely through isolated actions. Instead, there exists an inner essence that Allah alone fully comprehends. Another companion named Ibrahim then asks the Imam about the meaning of these lesser faults. The Imam explains that what appears within a believer may not always arise from his pure spiritual essence. This introduces one of the central teachings of the chapter. Imam al-Baqir begins to explain the doctrine of the two clays. According to the narration, Allah created a pure earth and caused pure water to flow through it. This earth accepted the wilaya of the Alal Bayt. From this pure substance emerged the prophets, the Imams, and the sincere believers. The Imam then describes another earth that became corrupted and rejected the wilaya. From this substance emerged the tyrants and leaders of disbelief. The narration explains that Allah then mixed these two substances together. Because of this mixture, traces of weakness may appear within believers, while traces of goodness may appear among those who oppose the truth. This teaching is presented as an explanation for a reality that everyone observes. Believers sometimes commit sins. Those who oppose the truth sometimes perform acts of charity, prayer, and outward righteousness. The narration suggests that these apparent contradictions are connected to the mixture of the two spiritual origins. The The Imam emphasizes that Allah knows the true source of every action. No deed is hidden from Him, no intention escapes. His knowledge, what appears confusing to human beings, is completely clear to Allah. The discussion then moves toward the Day of Judgment. Imam al-Baqir uses the example of the sun and its rays. When the sun sets, its rays return to the source from which they came. In the same way, every action ultimately returns to its true origin. According to the narration, Allah will separate what belongs to goodness from what belongs to evil. The good associated with the believer returns to its pure source. The evil associated with disbelief returns to its own source. Nothing remains mixed forever. Everything returns to its proper place. The Imam insists repeatedly that this process involves no injustice. Allah knows every servant completely. He knows their origins, intentions, struggles, and hidden realities. Therefore, His judgment is perfect. To support these teachings, the Imam cites several verses of the Quran. He refers to passages describing unbelievers carrying burdens on the Day of Judgment. He also cites verses concerning Allah's forgiveness and His power to transform evil deeds into good. The narration explains these verses as manifestations of Allah's wisdom and justice. The chapter continues by warning believers not to rely merely on outward acts of worship. Prayer, fasting, charity, and pilgrimage are all noble acts. However, the narration teaches that these actions must be accompanied by recognition of Allah, His chosen representatives, and the truth that He has revealed. Without proper recognition, outward actions alone do not guarantee success. The Imam further explains that human beings will return to the spiritual origins from which they were created. Those who originated from purity will return to purity. Those who followed falsehood despite believing themselves guided will discover the reality of their condition. The chapter concludes with a powerful affirmation of the knowledge and authority of the Imams. The narration describes them as guides appointed by Allah to lead believers toward truth and salvation. Their mission is presented as helping believers understand the reality of faith, avoid punishment, and enter the abode of peace prepared by Allah. Throughout the chapter, the central message remains consistent. Believers possess immense dignity. Their rights must be respected. Human beings cannot be judged solely by outward appearances. Allah alone knows the hidden realities within every soul. His justice is perfect. His knowledge encompasses all things, and ultimately every person returns to the truth of the essence from which they were created. May Allah grant us understanding, sincerity, and the ability to honor the rights of His believing servants. May He guide us toward His mercy, His forgiveness, and His eternal peace.